Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This podcast is made from the spaces I host every week on the Clubhouse app in the Social Impact Level Up Club. If you don't know me, I'm Wendy V, and I am a coach for socially conscious entrepreneurs. I help you develop your social impact mission, clarify your vision, and turn your ideas into action. Every week, I talk to leaders with a social impact mission about money mindset and manifestation. We also hold weekly spaces for our collective to join forces and change the world. In each episode, you'll hear me moderate the conversation with my two co-hosts, Rodrigo Bravo and Santiago Cáceres. Through this podcast, we hope that you will learn, grow, and thrive with our collective. Now, here's a little bit more about this episode. This is the second of 2 episodes where we are talking about abundance and manifestation blockers. These are the things that are blocking your manifestation powers, and you can get rid of them with a little bit of effort. Today's list continues the list that we had in episode 8, so if you are interested in the first 4, go back and listen to that episode. We'll talk about habits, body and health, environment, and relationships today. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Last week, I was shouting out the whole entire list at one time, but I think this week what I want to do is go over one of them and then chat about it and then go to the next one. So if anybody wants to come up to the stage, we're talking about abundance blockers. This is part 2 of our conversation from last week. So if you missed last week, you can go to the replays from last Monday, and I think it was 11:29, and will be the first 4 of the list. So this is the second set of 4 that we're talking about related to manifestation blockers that comes from reading on selfmadeladies.com. So I'm going to post a link to some stuff that I've been working on related to the replays and talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to give you guys just the space to talk about habits. And if there are habits that you think are holding you back, or habits that you want to reinforce for yourself because they're actually helping you, I'd be really curious to know where you are with the habits that are going on in your life. And it doesn't have to be just about your business. It could also be about your well-being or anything that is trying as a part of your life at this moment.
Yeah, I just had a little bit of issue getting to my mic. I would say one blocker would be not asking for help when you're stuck on something. A lot of times you're trying to get something done, and instead of just asking for that help overcoming that obstacle, that I would say is one big blocker many people have that they don't think of, just asking for that help.
That's interesting. I think that's true. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. I talk about this a lot when people come to ask questions about, oh, I want a grant, or I want to expand a program, or I want to do these different things. I ask them a bunch of questions, and a lot of the time they go, oh, I just didn't know what I didn't know about this, and it seems like I needed to know more. And it's really that people just don't know sometimes what type of help to ask for, or they don't know, what help would be available to them. And so they just don't ask for help. So I think sometimes really seeking help comes with a confidence that you have to be open to having help, and you have to be open to having someone dig into the things that you're doing and to give you feedback. And sometimes people have a difficult time receiving feedback. We've talked about that a lot. And so you always have to be honest with yourself if you have the capacity to get that support and really use it to move forward. Because sometimes we're in a space where we can get offered support or offered help, and we're just not able to do anything about it. We can't implement it. We don't have the space in our mind to think about how to use the help. And we just don't. And we just sit there and continue to do things on our own. And so I think that, yeah, definitely if you have need for support of some sort, these kinds of communities where there are others who are working on similar things to you is a great place for you to bring those needs, because you can ask for support and recommendations from your peers. And sometimes that isn't quite as daunting, really going and looking for if you're looking for, say, like a virtual assistant, it might be easier to get a recommendation from somebody than it is to go out and try to Google virtual assistant and get the millions of hits that you're going to get. So there's a lot of different ways to get support, and it looks different. I know for me, the support that I needed was a coach, and that has been all the difference in the last year of my world, to have somebody supporting me and being thoughtful about the feedback that they give, and really meaningful feedback, and trying to help me move what I'm trying to do forward. So I think for each of us, that support is going to look different, but if you're open to support, I think it's really important. So Monse, I'm going to go to you. Hey girl, how are you?
So, one big thing for me is procrastination. I'm the master of procrastination, unfortunately, but that's a habit I've been slowly breaking. And I've been breaking that because so I'm a person that likes to take everything on. So, I'm like, let me spread myself thin and I'll be everywhere. But I'm not an octopus, I'm human. I got to be realistic about that. I tend to break down my tasks. I tend to somewhat prioritize like the importance, like within whatever I need to get done immediately based on whatever deadlines I have to meet. Not saying that any task is any more or less important, but having to just break it down and taking the time, because I don't want to give anything just half effort. I have to give it full effort, and I break it down. At least that's what's been helpful for me in terms of just procrastination. And I say that because you mentioned it earlier. I'm like, I even took note of it. I was like, I'm gonna mention that. But yeah, that's something I've implemented, and I'm still implementing that. It's not easy. It definitely takes time. I'm still learning how to become not a master, but more or less just make it a good habit in my lifestyle and just everyday routine.
The question of the day for the moment is, what habits do you want to keep going with that are supporting what you're doing, or what habits do you need to break because they're blocking you from success at your goal? So that's what we're talking about. And I started out with the example of procrastination because I think a lot of
I
us
was just gonna
yeah, I said it. So here's what I said about procrastination. Sometimes we reinforce it by telling ourselves, "Oh, I work well under pressure," and then that's your like reward when you actually get the task done, and then you keep going with the procrastination, which isn't maybe the best strategy. So how do you pick a better strategy? So that's what we've been talking about.
So I believe like putting too much on your plate, overbooking yourself, just doing too much and not focusing on one thing really it's a bad habit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what once I started saying too. It's you want to do all the things. And when I'm coaching people, I say the same thing. It's you can't do all the things because you only have a finite amount of energy, each one of us. And we have as much time as we can put into things. But even if you have the time, you don't always have the energy to do the things. So when you overbook yourself and you overcommit yourself, you have basically said, I'm not going to allow my space anything else other than these things that I've already booked. And that's not possible, right? Because like things come up, different things happen. So you have to at least keep a reserve of not overbooking yourself to the point where if something happens, you get a flat tire or whatever, you're going to be like, oh no, I'm also have 4 other places I've got to be at the same time I have this flat tire. At least giving yourself a buffer is something to try of, hey, don't overcommit myself because there could be something that just comes up in my schedule that I don't know about right now. And then I think the other thing about overbooking yourself is there's definitely a tendency to say yes when you mean no. And one of the things I've been learning about my human design is how to understand my body mechanics and how to understand the intuition of when I should be saying yes and what I should be saying no. And so the one thing I'll say about that is that it's up to each of us to better understand ourselves so that we can really be true to what that feeling is. And if you are feeling no and you say yes, more than likely you're not going to be happy while you're doing that thing. You're going to be grudgingly doing that extra thing that you overbooked yourself with. So with me at least, it's been helpful to know the signs of what my body and what my intuition look like so that I know if I say no, no, and I'm not going to overcommit.
Yeah, procrastination is a big, we mask it different ways. And so one of the things that I used to do when I was learning how to deal with procrastination, or when I recognized it was just procrastination, was overextending myself. And so when I would fail, it wasn't a failure of me per se. I would just blame it on, I just got so many things to do. When in fact, it was my fault. It was my failure of planning. And so we try to soften the blows. If even some people, and I would say myself at that point, we do that just in case we do. It's, oh man, I couldn't do it because I had this thing to do and this other thing, and I had to do this and that. So it gives us like a cushioning if we do fail. But what we're really not doing is really tackling the main issue, which is our lack of planning, our lack of being able to say no to projects that we don't want to do, a lack of accountability, and really a lack of control on our own part. And so we mask it through that. And so I'm glad to hear that people are doing tools like that. I'm a big fan of the Eisenhower matrix. I use that all the time. It's something that I do, and I delegate stuff. I'm able to effectively manage certain things that way. And some things I just put it to the side. And so whenever I do a refocus, I'd use that. And that's helped me prevent procrastination from taking a hold, because I too am also a deadline warrior. And I hold myself as one of the most amazing warriors to ever confront deadlines in the history of mankind, because I've done that. But again, it's really at the end of the day masking a lack of planning on my behalf, all that stuff. So yeah, with that said, I'll definitely pass it on to Rochelle, see what she has to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm a newer entrepreneur and I'm relating to so much of what everyone is sharing, and I'm feeling like there's so many ideas, so many visions that I have. And at the same time, really trying to this idea of like refining. Like, I just came out of a mastermind and was doing traveling and training, and just got back to my homeland in Israel, and just that grounding and really focusing on what exactly I want to do and what clients I want to bring in. That's been a challenge for me, and I'm a very feminine being. And so I feel like in this space, it's really helpful to hear that like others are going through the same experience, and I appreciate what you're sharing. So yeah, thank
It's what I find is that people have a really difficult time translating idea into action because they have so many ideas, right? Like Rodrigo was saying, like overcommitted with all these different possibilities in your brain. And it's difficult to funnel them into what you're going to do every single day. So you start taking on too many strategies. And that's one of the things that Jessica and I have been working on. To follow a strategy through, keep going, versus picking up another strategy and layering that and layering another one on. So there's a lot of work in this space. I think all of us are doing, but I would say the first thing with your habits to understand is that your time and energy is going to be so important that you need to make sure you're using it wisely, and having some way to funnel your ideas into action is really going to be important for you. I know that there are 3 more, and we've already talked for 27 minutes about habits, but the other ones I think will go relatively quickly. So I'm going to do 2 of them together, because this is one of the conversations I have with people a lot under my workshops around the dimensions of wellness. And I think that because we often think about wellness as our physical and mental health, sometimes we forget about some of the other pieces that go together with that. And so this list that I've been working from, it's from selfmadeladies.com. I've mentioned it several times, and this is our abundance blockers, manifestation blockers list that we're going through second week. And so if you have time to listen to the first week, that is recorded and it's on my bio. You can go check that out. The next 2 are body and health and environment. So they were separate. They were body and health as one, and then environment as another one, but I'm going to talk about them together. So body and health to me is important in helping you keep going to where you're trying to get to. Our body is our vessel. This is how we do the things in the world that we need to do, how we think, how we act, how we show up. Our body is super duper important to getting our goals met, because we need to be able to spend that physical energy working towards our goals. And so taking care of your body is definitely working out and sleeping and drinking water and eating but it also is managing your stress level. And I think when we're in this space of entrepreneurship and we're working really hard, it's easy to burn yourself out and get stressed because you're the only person, or you're one of few people who are trying to do this work. And particularly if you feel like you're, really trying to change the world and you're trying to make an impact. And in doing that, all this stuff rides on you. And you can really make your body break down with stress. And I think that is something that people discount, is how toxic stress can be if it's not managed, but also at an age where you probably shouldn't be having different types of health issues. You'll start seeing health issues earlier and earlier resulting from exposure to stress. And so, one of the things that I often tell people is you have to do this planning and this work so that you could prevent the stress. And we're just not a prevention mindset oriented society to think about investing in the cheaper, longer term option than to keep going and just push through and become super stressed. And so, one of the things that we always have to manage is how does our body allow us to keep doing the work? And that also includes your environment. So, like, where are you physically at, and what does that look like? It's not only about your chair being ergonomically correct. It's also how do you keep your environment and your space and the way that it looks or the way that you show up in the space that you're physically in. So that also could be your community, right? It doesn't have to just be your home or your home office or your office. It could also be where are you showing up in your community? That could be online, that could be in real person. It just depends. And so environment is one that you think about how you interact with the environment and how the environment interacts with you. So this could also be related to your mindset because sometimes when you're working on manifestation and these types of things, you have to clear your mind. And one of the best ways to do that is to go outside and to ground yourself. A lot of time, even if you don't practice grounding, just being outdoors is helpful a lot of times. So it's really important that if you're doing this work, that you do spend some time trying to work on connecting with the environment and allowing yourself to really analyze and look at the environments that you're putting yourself in. So are you putting yourself in toxic conversations and toxic environments, then that's going to bring an additional amount of stress that you don't necessarily need. And so that's where you can get rid of some of that stress by getting rid of the environment that you are interacting with where that's available to you. So those are the ones that I would say out of the list. The first one was habits, the second one is body and health, and then the third one is environment. The last one is relationships. And so relationships is how you connect with others. And as I said before, that might be your environments, but it's also the social influences and who you surround yourself with. You are the one who has control over it. You can put up boundaries, you can accept things, you can change things, you can give up a relationship if it's not serving you, or you can decide to connect to new people if you need new influences. And so relationships is another important one in terms of how you're continuing to work towards your abundance. I think for me, Clubhouse is one of those places where, managing your relationships is really important. So continuing to find people and connect with people that are doing meaningful work or who are doing work that's similar to mine or who have the same mindset that I do, all of those things have been really important. And I think that support system has been probably the biggest support system in this journey versus like the people that I know in person. So I've been very grateful for this app and for the folks that I've connected to all of you guys, but also just for being able to be in the spaces and the conversations that we're in where we're learning and growing. I think that it's important, the connections that we've made. So I don't know, Rich, how you feel like the connections in Clubhouse have helped you, but are there other relationships that have been helpful?
With Clubhouse, you get to listen to people from experience and expertise from all over the world, and you hear unique stuff all the time that you've never thought of. So that's why I like Clubhouse, just for the diversity of thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I think the amount of topics that come up are sometimes topics that I wouldn't even have thought to have a conversation about. So I'm grateful for people who know about different types of things, all being in the same space and having a lot of access to knowledge. Now that you've joined our community by listening to this podcast episode, I want to welcome you to participate in a conversation with our collective very soon. If you're not on the Clubhouse app, you can connect to me on any social media platform as Wendy Veloz, Veloz. I'd like to thank everyone in our community who participated in this episode, and especially my partners in crime, Santiago and Rodrigo. Until next episode, keep changing the world.